All right. Since we just knocked Tim Pool for doing this, did you pull that other one? Let's just do it. I know, like, it's not about. This is just another example of another person who, like, apparently just doesn't think that, like, it's relevant to do any research whatsoever when you're going to make a point. If it somehow dovetails into your point, do we have that from the Slack? The Jimmy clip.
Oh,
guys, do we have this?
I thought we were going in a different direction. Okay. We're going to do
I didn't know. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, this is, I didn't know which one you were talking about, but this, I found this stunning. Jimmy Dore plays this clip, and I don't know if they were pretending or not. Like, I can't quite tell, but this is, and sometimes we play clips and we're not sure where they came from, like who to credit it to, but this is just sort of, I mean, and I present this to folks again, because it's like, look, I don't know if Jimmy Dore has any different politics than I do, to the extent that I don't even know that he has any real politics other than, like, he's mad at, authority. And that seems to drive everything.
No. I'm sorry, Sam. You're not giving him enough credit. He's mad at Democrats.
Well, yeah, I mean, but apparently it's a little bit broader than that, because here he is playing a clip of a speech from the Boogaloo Boys. And I don't think that you should not play a clip from the Boogaloo Boys. And I don't think that there's something that you couldn't look at this and go, this is interesting. But to not know anything about the Boogaloo Boys and not understand what the guy's even saying here, because you don't know who the Boogaloo Boys are, is stunning to me. And it's extremely dangerous for young people, for people who are, who actually take the time to read things.
Which he does not, yes.
But he doesn't even know. Play this clip.
Force for good in the world. When was that? 1940?
Come on, Mac. You know when that was the thing. That time. You know the thing.
So here's a guy. There's a guy who's a man who aligns with Boogaloo Boys. Who are the Boogaloo Boys? What is that? I don't even know what that is. Do you, Ron?
I don't know.
Is that like the Proud Boys?
I only do a news show.
Steph, look up Boogaloo Boys.
I'll look at Boogaloo. My guess is they're Proud Boys who like to dance.
I think they're probably Proud Boys with rhythm.
Okay.
So stop at the joke.
So this guy went to the state capitol in Michigan, and he gave this speech. Now, Ron, I want you to listen to this speech and tell me how much of this you agree with.
Pause it for 1 second.
Because we're told
the Boogaloo Boys, there's basically two strains of Boogaloo Boys. One strain is a virulent white supremacist. And over the years, some of the white supremacy has supposedly been submerged into another version of white supremacy called extreme libertarianism. And the extreme libertarians, they don't want society. And some of these Boogaloo Boys have, over the course of the summer, participated in some BLM and Antifa protests because they are for the smashing of the government, and to do so in a violent way. Some of them think these protests are healthy because it could bring about a civil war. And now I want you to just keep that in your mind. They are heavily armed. They are often part of like militias. Understand, when you talk about a civil war, think about for a moment where the lines might break down if there's a civil war, or if the government goes away and you've got these guys with all these weapons. Play this clip.
Gave this speech. Now, Ron, I want you to listen to this speech and tell me how much of this you agree with. Because we're told these people are maniacs.
Yes, they're loosely organized, far-right, anti-government, and extremist political movement in the United States, according to Wiki.
Oh,
Okay.
Wikipedia. Okay, good.
Oh,
We got
good.
that
I'm
from
glad.
Wikipedia.
I'm glad
Well,
they
here's
did
what
some
he says.
research.
Antifa, Boogaloo, and right-wing militias, they are the antibodies, not the disease that is destroying our country.
Did he included Antifa in that?
Yeah,
He
I
also
mean, I think he said BLM, Antifa, and then he also said
Boogaloo,
and
yeah.
Proud Boys.
Yeah.
Pause
so
it
let me
for 1
listen to it
second.
again.
He also said right-wing militias. I mean, the idea that they're going through this on air and trying to figure out, like, maybe these guys are our friends. They're not examining the Boogaloo Boys here. And the funny part is that the dude in the I think that's his his sidekick starts to realize, like, hey, wait a second, maybe this is sort of irresponsible that we're not actually educating people as to who these people are. But go back, keep playing.
BLM, Antifa, Boogaloo, and right-wing militias.
Yes, he says BLM, Antifa, Boogaloo, and right-wing militias are not the problem. That's what he's saying. Let's listen to it again.
BLM, Antifa, Boogaloo, and right-wing militias, they are the antibodies, not the disease that is destroying our country.
They are the antibodies, he says, not the disease destroying our country.
The disease is a country run by two corrupt political parties that do not care about you. So deeply incestuous with corporations that they are indistinguishable from each other. A government that spent 6 months debating whether to give their own people $600, but only 24 hours to unanimously agree to give billions of dollars to foreign tyrannical governments and corporations. A government that has bombed villages overseas my entire life for my supposed safety here. This is a call for unity. For all of American people that realize the true threat against us to come together. For every mother mourning her children that was killed by police, for every business crushed down by state lockdowns, for every broken soldier sent to fight wars that have no point. This is our last chance to avoid either a tyrannical government or a bloody and pointless civil war among American people who do not have that much against each other and have more in common than they realize.
Can we
And a message to the government.
Pause it. I just want to catch people up here. Businesses crushed by an oppressive state
right?
during COVID.
That's the key thing. It's not just like making guest appearances at BLM protests. They were anti-lockdown protesters.
That's why they're in the state house in Michigan. And look, yes, they say some things that people would agree with in that moment, but let's carry this through. What is the civil war they're going to be fighting on? These right-wing militias that they're aligned with. Who do we think that we're going to be, who are they going to align with? The right-wing militias. Do you think those right-wing militias are going to go like, well, we're going after the corporations now. So Black Lives Matter.
Yeah. Well, I loved watching him realize, this makes a lot of sense to me in real time as the Boogaloo Boys guy was talking.
Well, it's best when, like, that's why he's farming this out to his partner there. And his partner's like, well, I wouldn't, but here, continue.
I mean, the thing Jimmy's interested in is the both parties are equally corrupt.
Exactly.
And here's the danger about that. Perfectly fine to believe that if that's the case. And to some extent, the corruption is there. Obviously, we can already see within a day or two that there's some material benefits to having the corrupt Democratic Party in office as opposed to the corrupt Republican Party in office. But if the antibody to this virus of corruption is right-wing militia, guess what, folks? It's going to take over the host body and kill everything that doesn't look like it.
Is civil war. I mean, the casual nature with which you throw that out, we care a ton about giving people health care. Medicare for all is the number one priority of Jimmy and his ilk. But yeah, we're totally cool with a civil war that presumably might hurt some people.
Tim McVeigh also had a real problem with the government, too. Continue.
More in common than they realize. And a message to the government. We come in peace. We do not intend to commit violence. But I am pleading with you, with tears in my eyes and cracks in my voice. If you continue to oppress the American people, they will remain rational no longer. Thank you.
What do you mean by that?
Those guys look really rational.
So what's happening there is a right-wing militia guy reaching out to the left-wing people in BLM and Antifa saying we have more in common than our government wants us to think. Did you hear what he said? He said they can't give us $600. They could barely come up with $600 in a whole year, but they can come up with billions and trillions of dollars for international corporations and corrupt governments, foreign governments. We want to bring our soldiers home. I don't. Did he say anything there that you could disagree with, Ron?
I would say
Yeah,
emphasizing
in
business
theme,
owners.
I think everything he's saying
Civil
really
War?
just paints the picture of what's going on societally. I don't know if this guy's with any particular group or if he's just a guy making a
with the
speech. I mean,
Boogaloo
I don't know who
Boys,
he
and he's
is,
standing
but,
with other
um,
guys in
but
military
yeah,
garb and
I think
weapons.
he's right on that. It's like this is the system that's oppressing the American people. That is, putting us in these
He's not
endless
making
wars
any
that
type of
has turned
systemic. He's not making any type of systemic
It's an
critique.
anarchist critique,
He's.
or whatever a critique is.
No, it's not anarchist.
It's not even anarchist. It is just this state. The government is inhibiting our commerce for the sake of a pandemic, and so we're going to show up with weapons here. Now, here's the other thing: you're taking at face value everything this guy says in this moment, wearing his fatigues, carrying his weapon, with guys on both sides. This is what you do. This is why you read things, why you go and investigate who's saying these things and what might be their motivation to appeal in this moment to other people who are anti-authoritarian, who are railing against not the government per se, but a system of oppression that can really ultimately only be addressed ultimately by a government. And the idea that they would present this as like, could he could, the very words he's saying in this moment sound fine. I mean, this is just the height of irresponsibility or just blatant misinformation. I think it's just sheer laziness on some level.
It's the same leftists, like, when they side with Tucker Carlson because he says anti-war things one night. Like, that's the exact same dynamic.
But even more dangerous because, everybody doesn't, you can watch Tucker Carlson, see other things that he does here. But just platforming the Boogaloo Boys, and then not just platforming them, but presenting them as if, like, some of the stuff they say is good.
But he also obscures a critique of capitalism, and so do the Boogaloo Boys when they act like it's just the parties in control of all these corporations and not capitalism had created a state that serves it. Right?
Exactly.
That's the fundamental problem with, from a left perspective, what these guys are saying.
These are the I think it's the was it the Hessians or the Strassites who had a problem with capitalism because it brought in wokeism on some level under Hitler. But go ahead.
Back on everyone during a pandemic, and this is the problem.
Oh, pause it for 1 second, too. I want to remind
that
everybody that the Democrats passed at least $2,000 back in the early spring. So when we say our government wouldn't do this, unfortunately, for people during a COVID, the government was not controlled by Democrats who are trying to figure out a way to pass an extra $1,600. May not be as much as you'd want. I would want an extra $2,400 before, obviously. That we reported today, they're talking about another 3,000. Maybe it's insufficient. But when we talk about why the government didn't provide something, it is exactly the way that, like, we criticize mainstream corporate media for obscuring the differences between the parties that are preventing certain things from happening. You want to talk about Medicare for all? Both parties are not providing it. But you want to talk about checks during COVID? There's a reason why we don't have it. It was because of the Republican Party.
Theme where it's like when stuff like this happens, and we've been talking about stuff like this for 4 years, what happens when people are oppressed, when a system is completely broken and has thrown working people over the boat. People turn to demagogues. People, are desperate. People have nowhere to turn, and that's where our society is at. And the system is unbroken. The system continues, and today, you kind of saw a lot of that just going on today, where you just had these super wealthy elite people patting each other on the back. You had, I mean, even, and I watched a lot of the inauguration, and it was pretty cringe throughout most of it. I mean, Lady Gaga had a pin on that looked like something out of the Hunger Games, which was very poetically appropriate, considering what's going on at the world at large. So yeah, I mean,
it's all aesthetic. All this is aesthetic.
Yeah,
captures the frustrations of what's really going on in our society.
Whoa,
that's remarkable. I think that's really a remarkable piece of video. And of
So
course,
you
people
had
will
his
disparage
buddy
that guy and they'll
basically-
disparage.
You had his buddy basically try and pull the conversation away because he realized at one point, like, oh, wait a second, we're promoting essentially right-wing militias here. And I got news for you, folks. When that civil war comes, those right-wing militia guys, they're not on your side. And they got a lot of guns.
And I think just strategically, the idea that Antifa or BLM would get anything about like being seen in the same vicinity as protests with these guys, I think is asking for trouble, because these guys are completely reckless and have guns. And that will, you want the roll up of Antifa by DHS, have them in, bed with one of these Boogaloo guys who does something extremely reckless. And all of a sudden, you have another Red Scare in your hands.
These are the Bundys. I mean,
Yeah,
it's the same sort of ideology here.
Yeah, suburban Bundys.
And the idea that, like, again, it's like it is the height of irresponsibility at best to present these guys like you should listen to them. I mean, I just like it. It's not inconceivable to me that you've like, I don't know what the number is. It's probably just, I feel quite confident that it's greater than zero. Some 15-year-old kid is going to go look up the Boogaloo Boys and go like, that looks cool, man. Carry weapons, get into gear. And we're consistent. We're on the same page. BLM, man. I mean,
and the laziness of like the constant like return to material benefits aren't being provided for people. Like, as if that really has that much of a connection to that ideology, or just like also
how much you think it costs to buy a weapon like that?
No,
I mean,
I know. I mean, it's just like there's also like it would be wonderful if they would never do it because the core audience would fall apart. But like, would they ever acknowledge white supremacy, white nationalism, a lot of these emotional driving factors that are beyond the checks cut to people? Like, that is a huge element that should not be tied into this. There isn't a connection there.
And it's not like this is an examination of like, society is unstable at this point because there is immiseration in those people's communities, et cetera, et cetera. But this, if you want to do a thoughtful sort of like examination of the things that drive these guys, but to sit there and just let the guy talk, platform his thing and say like, these guys seem perfectly reasonable to me. That's not the point. And that's why his buddy tried to make it like, well, we live in a general era where things are bad and blah, blah, blah. But they'd never actually point out, hey, this is specifically the way not to go. These are people you don't want to get involved with, even though maybe we are all subjected to the same forces that brings us about. I mean, I think it's arguable as to whether that's the case. But even if that's your argument, that's the way to do it. The way he's doing it is he is funneling people into those right-wing movements. And that is what is problematic about it.
Yeah, I mean, I have hesitations bringing up the Socialist Rifle Association, even though in principle I agree with what they do. But like, that's because I don't want somebody to get killed. To lead your audience members to join a group that will get them killed for ideas who you are completely not informing them about is, I think, reprehensible.
It really, honestly, I mean, it is like.
But he's not informed about it. He's not informed about it. He saw a video of it and thought, wow, this actually fits kind of my agenda. And so here we go. I mean, like, no one on his staff was informed. They were looking up the wiki about Boogaloo Boys right there on the fly. Like, so you've got to then examine, if you're someone who still enjoys his content, what is his agenda then? Because it's certainly not informing you.
It's really, I mean, it's to take that stuff at face value. It's just, I think it's just, I can't even get, I can't get past it. I really can't. Believe me, I wish